Good morning. Good morning. I thought I would take a few minutes this morning to share with you some thoughts about a concept that's called an ethical will. Now, most of us know wills from the standpoint of doing our estate plan and making sure we have a will and last testament in place that actually lines out who we want to have as the executor of our estate, who our beneficiaries are, what do we want to ensure that our beneficiaries receive from us, usually intangible items and personal possessions. But there's a concept that's been around. You may or may not have ever heard of it. It's called an ethical will. Now, a lot of people say ethical wills, is that something new? No, it's really not. It's thousands of years old, actually. And many, many years ago now, back in probably the early 2000s, I was trained by a physician who was very involved in hospice care on what an ethical will was all about and how to help families prepare an ethical will. So let me explain a little bit to you what an ethical will is all about. An ethical will is a way for you to share with your family and friends your values, your beliefs, your life experiences, life lessons that you've learned, hopes for the future, your love for them as family members and friends. Even some people write letters of forgiveness, asking different people to forgive them, as well as writing a statement of forgiveness to other people who have hurt them in their lifetime. So, an ethical will is something that can stand apart from your traditional last will and testament as we typically know it today. And it can cause you to spend some time in reflection. There are often a number of questions that you can ask yourself when you're writing this kind of ethical will, obviously, based on looking at this from the standpoint of being a statement of your values, life lessons, things you've learned, uh, experiences that you've had, people that have been meaningful to you. Obviously, it's a kind of piece that you don't necessarily have to wait until after you've passed to share it with people. In fact, it's potentially more meaningful when you can share it when you're still around and can discuss it with people and they can continue to ask you questions. I often tell my families that I work with that once mom or dad or grandpa or grandma or your aunt or uncle, once they're gone, you have no more opportunity to ask them about their lives and what their life was like when they were younger and what they recall growing up around and the experiences that they went through. One of the people that I reflect on now that I wish I had had more time with was my mom's mom, my grandma, Grandma Kirsch. And she was born in 1899. I believe that was it, 1899. And she passed when she was in her mid to late 80s. And she was a hoot. She grew up in a very large farming family, as most people did who were born in the 1800s, early 1900s. And she had such a sense of humor. And I remember talking to her about what life was like to have started out basically in horse and buggy days, riding a horse when she wanted to, being in a buggy to get to church or to go grocery shopping, or you had to walk, one or the other, right? And then to live through man walking on the moon and space travel. Incredible stories that she had to tell, and I just wish I had more time with her. But here are some thoughts. If you would consider at all doing an ethical will, and it's part of what I do professionally. I write and I help families and individuals put together their legacies, their stories, their ethical wills. So here's some trigger kind of questioning that you can sit down with and with paper begin to write your legacy, your story for your loved ones and friends. Here's some phrases that you can use and complete as you begin your reflections in order to write your ethical will. From my grandparents, I learned that, and answer that question. Who were those key grandparents in your life or older family members that really were your mentors that helped to maybe even raise you? My dad's mother, Grandma Tufford, Grandma Edith, she actually lived upstairs when she wasn't in the home of a local family helping to raise their children. She was basically a nanny. And so she spent a lot of her time away from the house that her husband had built, that I actually was blessed to grow up in. But she had her own bedroom and area up in what we called the upstairs attic area. And when she wasn't actually working with a family, mentoring their children, being a nanny, she was back at the house. So I was really blessed to be able to grow up around her and to have her influence in my very early years. So from my grandparents, I learned that. How would you answer that question? And which of your grandparents were most significant in terms of the impact on your life? A second question. From my parents, I learned that, and again, to be able to reflect on your parents, your mom, your dad, maybe a stepmother or stepfather, maybe you were adopted, so your adoptive parents, whoever those people in your life that were parent figures for you, what did you learn from them? What impacted you? And let me say, it's not always looking at just what impacted us positively. Sometimes it's having to be honest and looking at what impacted us negatively. And that's okay because all of those life experiences have made you who you are today. And those lessons, both the negative and the positive, can be important lessons and experiences to share with people younger than yourself. Third question I would ask is, from my spouse or children or siblings, I've learned that, and continue through that generational reflection. What did you learn when you were the middle daughter of three daughters? What did you learn as the firstborn? What did you learn as the baby of the family? Each of those generational differences based on birth order, you will have very different reflections. You'll have different remembrances of key events in the family life that went on. I think about my older sister versus my younger sister. And my poor younger sister, the baby of the family, often sort of gets a little frustrated because we do call her the baby of the family, which she is, and that she got away with a whole lot more than what I got away with, or even my older sister, the firstborn, got away with. And it's just interesting because when you stop and think, there's about a 9 or 10 year difference between my older sister and my younger sister. So they grew up in totally different lifetimes, really. It's almost like having two separate families. So, what did you learn from your siblings and from your birth order within the family? Did you sort of, because you were the first one and your parents were learning how to be parents and take care of little ones, did you sort of get most of the heat, so to speak, or the strictness, or the just all that careful parenting that usually we go through with the first one that becomes a little more lax as number two, three, or four, and five come along? Obviously, your own children, things that you've learned being a parent. It's amazing once you do have children of your own, how number 1, you get to see life all over again through a young person's eyes, through that, young child's eyes, which is pretty cool. It's like going to Disneyland. If you've ever been to Disneyland, you've been there 1,000 different times, and all of a sudden you have a young 5-year-old child to take to Disneyland. You see Disneyland all over again, through a 5-year-old's eyes. That's pretty cool. And there's things we learn from our children as we raise them and as we are around them. So that might be some important pieces of information you would want to make part of your ethical will. And also your spouse. What have you learned from your partner? Um, how have they impacted you both positively and negatively? They say opposites attract, so there's probably a lot of learning that has gone on, particularly if you're the opposite of your partner and spouse. And some of those pieces of life experience are things you'll want to write down and pass on. Sort of a fourth question to reflect on. From experience, I learned that. And that's a pretty broad area, right? It's everything that you could have learned from working outside the home, being a stay-at-home parent, taking care of the home front while other people were out in the job market, bringing in the bacon, so to speak. Um, what you learned in your professional career as you advanced in your particular profession. Or maybe you never really settled into one thing, which, of course, for many people in years past, once you got into a particular profession or area of work, you often stayed in that work for 30 or 40 years, often with the same company. That's changed dramatically in the last 40 to 50 years. Most folks today don't stay with the same company, and many times they shift gears and end up doing something very different than what they had done previously. So, all those professional work related learnings, information you learned about how to deal with people and situations, there's just such richness there when you begin to talk to people, particularly the older adults I speak to, and what it was like for them to work. My mom's mom ended up actually going out to work outside the home. That was in large part due to a divorce that she went through from my grandfather. And so she had to find employment. And she worked in a major retail store that is no longer with us. But I remember going to visit her when she was working. And she had so many wonderful experiences as she served people in that retail department store, and so many interesting people that she bumped into. And she enjoyed every moment of it. They would dress up for different holidays at the store so they could come in different costumes or outfits. And I'll never forget, she wore this one 1920s bathing suit, which was, and we had it. I don't know where it is now, but we had it at one time, all black with an orange trim, sort of a V-neck, short sleeved uh, shorts, obviously, and then this very long dress-like top, tunic top. And she used to, when they dressed up at the department store, that was one of the costumes. I remember pictures of her. In fact, I'm sure we've still got them, of her at work in this 19 roaring 20s bathing suit. Black nylons too, or black socks. She had to be totally covered up. It was hilarious. Another question to ask yourself is, what are you grateful for? What are you grateful for? When you look back over your life and all of your experiences, everything you've gone through, what are you grateful for about your life and about where you've been and what you've done? And again, maybe even noting key people that you haven't already made note of who particularly touched you in a meaningful way. And sort of a last question to ask, my most meaningful religious holidays or experiences or traditions are, and be able to speak to some of your remembrances for key holidays throughout the year. Maybe it was a July 4th picnic in particular that you remember as a 10-year-old, and that whole event just still stands out for you. Maybe it's the day you were baptized at church. Whatever those traditions were, again, for you, that were important and significant, that even now, as you look back, you realize those were turning points or major passage points within your life experience. So, an ethical will, those are just some of the questions you can ask yourself and reflect on. Sometimes it's helpful to have someone help you reflect on all of that. You can pull out photographs because for me, I'm a little older now, and it's hard sometimes to think back to those earlier experiences until I sit and talk to my two sisters or another family member, or we pull out the photo album and we begin to flip through all those old black and white photos. Yes, I'm old enough where we have black and white printed photos around. Um, but in looking at those photographs, then it brings back the memories. And then I can recall more detail about those memories. Now, the other thing that I often tell people, because people say, "Oh gosh, Marsh, do I have to actually write this? I don't want to write it. I'm not a writer. I don't want to put it on paper. That takes way too long." The other way that you can do an ethical will is obviously to record it, to videotape it. Sometimes that's actually easier to do. You don't have to obviously record everything all in one setting. You just record piece by piece by piece what you want to reflect on and talk about. And then just add to it when you have an opportunity to do so. So I think that as I look at ethical wills, I have helped families interview their older family members and really found some interesting historical information that the families had no idea existed. And it's been fun working on ethical wills and helping to produce those legacy stories. It's one of the things that when I, obviously in my line of work, as one pediatrician told me once, "Marcia, I can't see how you do what you do. All your patients, die." And he's right. The people that I work with, for the most part, every single one of them stays with me until the day they pass. So I have an opportunity oftentimes to be the last person with them, the last person to really sit and talk with them about life and what they've experienced. And to me, it's such an honor to be able to present some of those life stories, some of those legacy lessons to the family after someone has passed. So there's a lot of different ways that you can approach writing your story. You can write an ethical will and present it to your loved ones, even as a special gift during a holiday. Or you can wait until after you're gone and have it in a special envelope that gets passed on to your loved ones. But I would really encourage you that if you're going to take the time to videotape or write out your life story, your legacy, key things that you want to share with your loved ones, I really try to encourage people, do it when you can still interact with them and allow them to ask you some further questions, and so they continue to gain insights. It's actually a very fun thing to do. I know for some families, because there have been tragedy, tragic things take place, and some trauma, it's hard. It's hard to do it. So I'm not suggesting everything is always roses and bluebirds and apple pie. There are some tough moments to discuss as well, but I think it can be really a healing experience, a refreshing experience, even in talking about the hard stuff of life, because that's what life is. It's good and it's bad. It's wonderful and it's sad. There's so many different parts to each of our lives, but you've lived with purpose, I hope and pray, and you have life lessons and information that only you have. No one else has it. And once you're unable to present it or share it, then that's lost forever. So, besides just doing your genealogy and double checking who your forefathers and foremothers are on a genealogical chart, think about doing an ethical will and presenting that to your loved ones as a great gift of legacy of your life to them. I think you'd be surprised. They might be more excited about it than what you think. Take care.